The Sunday morning air was crisp, but gentle sunlight skimming across Lake George like a sheet of glass. The farewell brunch was set beneath a canopy of white linen and climbing ivy, with champagne glasses catching the light like prisms. Around me, laughter drifted from table to table, Rowan's friends reliving inside jokes from the reception, my mother fussing with her napkin as she beamed at a group of guests, and my father deep in conversation with the man Lyra had introduced as her father. I sipped my mimosa slowly, letting the sweetness settle on my tongue, trying to anchor myself in this moment. It had been a beautiful weekend, a fairy tale really. Rowan looked happier than I'd seen him in years, and Lyra, well, Lyra had managed to win over everyone, even my parents, which was no small feat. Lucian sat beside me quiet as always, but present his fingers, occasionally brushing mine beneath the table. He was the kind of man who noticed details no one else did, but he rarely voiced them unless it truly mattered. He reached for his coffee, then suddenly leaned close to my ear. "We need to leave," he whispered. "Now." I blinked. "What?" He didn't look at me, just stirred his coffee calm and controlled as always. "Not here. Just get up. Now." The hairs on my neck prickled. "Lucian," I whispered. "What are you talking about?" He finally met my eyes, and in that moment the sunlight disappeared. His expression wasn't panicked. It was something worse, measured, prepared. "You really didn't notice?" he asked. My stomach fluttered uneasily. Notice what his voice dropped further, barely audible over the clink of forks and polite conversation. "The bride." I stared at him, but before I could press further, Lyra laughed across the garden, bright, sparkling, effortless. She was talking to my father, again, her hand resting lightly on his forearm, as she said something that made him nod approvingly. She was radiant in a cream sundress, her hair swept back in a loose braid, not a single detail out of place. "What about her?" I asked, my voice low. Lucian's jaw tightened. "She's not who she says she is." I stared at Lucian, waiting for the punchline that never came. His eyes didn't waver. There was no hint of exaggeration, no trace of teasing. He meant it. "You can't just say something like that," I said quietly, my voice thin. She's Rowan's wife." Lucian gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. "That's exactly why I've been watching." I wanted to dismiss him, to chalk it up to his innate caution, but something in his tone made my fingers go cold. "You think she's lying about what her name, her background?" He reached into the inner pocket of his blazer and slipped me his phone under the table. I tilted the screen toward me. A short list, nothing flashy, just lines in a notes app, bullet points, specific, clinical. My throat tightened. I scrolled again, hoping it would feel far-fetched, but it didn't. Each item pricked at a memory. I had noticed the phone case swap. I had caught the shifting accent, but I'd let them slide like we all do when someone's beautiful, kind, and adored by everyone in the room. I didn't want to say anything unless I had something real. Lucian murmured, watching my expression. "But this isn't just instinct anymore. Something's off." From across the table, Rowan's laughter rang out, unguarded and boyish. He leaned in to whisper something to Lyra, who smiled at him with a sweetness that felt nearly theatrical. My heart ached at the sight. "Do you think he knows I asked?" Lucian shook his head. "Not a chance. That's why we need to be smart about this." I swallowed hard and returned his phone. I couldn't look at Lyra now without hearing the echo of Lucian's words. "She's not who she says she is." As the clatter of cutlery and light conversation carried on around us, I sat frozen in place, quietly realizing that my brother may have married a woman none of us truly knew. I remember the first time Rowan brought her to dinner. We were at our parents' house in Rhinebeck, just the four of us and her. She wore a cream turtleneck dress, understated, but tailored to perfection, and brought a bottle of wine from a friend's vineyard in Alsace. She called my mother Estra by name, within minutes complimented her antique silver, and asked my father thoughtful questions about zoning ordinances and municipal tax codes, things most people would fake polite interest in for 10 seconds before glazing over. That night, I remember Lucian raising a brow as she recited a quote from Kierkegaard, and then pivoted effortlessly into real estate investment returns. I thought she was a little intense, maybe even a bit rehearsed, but I chalked it up to first impressions. She was beautiful, almost intimidatingly so, and I figured she was just trying hard to win us over. Rowan beamed the entire evening. I'd never seen him so utterly swept up into someone. And 5 months later, when he called to say they were engaged, I didn't even feign surprise. He was all in, and Lyra, she had made it so easy to fall for her. But now, in the haze of Lucian's list and the pressure building in my chest, I saw the weekend differently. I remembered how Lyra's voice softened when speaking to older guests, deepened when talking business with my father, even gained a trace of a southern lilt when chatting with the florist from Savannah. I'd smiled at her adaptability then, how she made everyone feel like the center of the room. I hadn't realized she was shape-shifting, and there were the questions. On Saturday night, while we were walking through the garden, she asked how long our family had held the land in Connecticut. I told her it was part of our father's broader real estate trust, that it was protected under a family LLC. She listened with such focused interest, I actually paused, wondering if I'd said too much. Now I wasn't wondering, I was sure. As the brunch continued, my mind clicked through every interaction like puzzle pieces snapping into place. Lucian never trusted easily. It's part of what makes him good at what he does. Numbers don't lie, and people usually do. From the moment we arrived at the estate, he'd been watching, taking mental notes, snapping quiet photos, asking pointed but casual questions when no one was paying attention. I'd brushed it off as a habit, but clearly he'd seen something I hadn't. Back in our suite after brunch, while I tried to calm the storm gathering in my chest, Lucian opened his laptop and pulled up a folder, labeled only with the letter L. Inside were screenshots, property records, LinkedIn profiles, none of which matched the story Lyra had been telling. There's no digital footprint for a Lyra Deneuve before 2021, he said calmly. No school records, no tax returns, no voter registration, no student loans, not even an expired Instagram handle. If she's real, she didn't exist before 2 years ago. I stared at the screen. The photos she'd posted online, travel shots, wine tastings, conference panels were all recent, sleek, professional, almost curated. She told Rowan she was born in Brussels, I murmured, studied at École Hôtelière de Lausanne, did her MBA in Lyon. Lucian nodded. I checked. No records under her name at either institution. No alumni mentions, no academic citations. My stomach tightened. I had assumed, like everyone else, that someone like Lyra didn't need to prove herself. She glided through the world with that rare, effortless charm. But now I saw it how convenient it was to have a resume built on places most Americans wouldn't know how to verify. There's something else, Lucian added, and his tone shifted. I overheard Rowan talking to your father last night. He said he added Lyra as a joint trustee to the family legacy account, said it was a wedding gift. A show of faith. I sat back stunned. That trust wasn't just symbolic. It held nearly 3 generations of property deeds, investments, contingency funds. Rowan may not have millions of his own, but the keys he'd handed her, those were priceless. Lucian closed the laptop slowly, his expression unreadable. Lucian sent a message to an old friend of his, someone from his early days in private security, before he moved fully into corporate forensics. I didn't ask for the man's name, and Lucian didn't offer it. All I knew was that within 6 hours he had results. He showed me a file late that night. We sat cross-legged on the bed in silence, my heartbeat loud in my ears as he scrolled. The woman in the photo was Lyra, only she wasn't called Lyra. The name beneath the driver's license was Margot Ellison, and the image was older, her hair darker, her smile slightly tighter. But it was unmistakably her. She was married before Lucian said. 3 years ago, to a man named Darian Blake, hedge fund manager, based out of Portland, Maine. He clicked again and a newspaper clipping loaded. The headline made my breath catch. Local financier Blake declares bankruptcy after wife vanishes with millions. Lucian tapped a paragraph mid-article. She disappeared the day after the wedding, took with her access to his portfolio, 2 investment accounts, and the passwords to a trading firm he'd put in her name. I couldn't speak. I just kept staring at the image, the name, the devastation spelled out in small black type. Lucian reached for his phone. I called him, he said. Didn't give him our full story, just said we were trying to understand who Margot Ellison really was. Darian had agreed to speak. His voice, Lucian said, was hollow, measured, not angry but still haunted. He told Lucian she was dazzling, intelligent, a woman who knew exactly how to make you feel like the only person in the room. She never raised her voice, never showed anger, just disappeared the morning after their first night as husband and wife. She took everything he said, not just the money. She made me doubt myself. I stopped trusting people. Clients pulled out. I haven't worked in 18 months. I felt a cold thread move through me as Lucian added, he still doesn't know how much was real, if any of it was. He said she had a way of making you forget your instincts. And Rowan had always been ruled by his heart. The guest house was quiet when I approached, the curtains drawn and the back patio empty. Most of the guests were still at the spa or wine tasting. Rowan had booked out nearly the whole property for a full day of relaxation and bonding. Lyra had excused herself earlier, claiming she needed rest before the sunset cruise. I knew I had a narrow window. Lucian kept watch near the pathway, pretending to be on a call. I slipped in through the back door, which wasn't locked. Inside, everything was perfectly arranged floral robes, folded a half-eaten yogurt on the marble counter, the faint scent of lavender rising from a diffuser in the corner. It was like stepping into a magazine spread. But I wasn't here to admire her taste. I headed straight for the bedroom, scanning the vanity and side tables. Drawers revealed nothing but makeup, jewelry rolls, and silk scarves arranged in neat bundles. Then I spotted it beneath the bed, just inside a travel bag tucked into a hidden side pocket of a monogrammed weekender, a zippered black pouch. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands shaking as I unzipped it. 3 IDs fell out, each from a different state, each with a different name. Margot Ellison, Clara Gentry, and Lyra Deneuve. All different hairstyles, all unmistakably her. Beneath them, 2 USB drives in matte silver casings. And finally, a photo, glossy printed, slightly bent at the edges. It was Lyra, wearing a wedding gown. But the man beside her wasn't Rowan. He was taller, older, with gray at his temples and a hand resting possessively at her waist. They were standing in front of a villa I didn't recognize. I sat there staring at the image, the dresses, the names, trying to keep my breathing steady. It wasn't just Rowan. She'd done this before, maybe more than once. I slid everything back, carefully took one of the USBs and zipped the pouch closed exactly as I'd found it. As I stepped out into the bright afternoon sun, Lucian met my eyes and didn't have to ask. I just nodded once. Back in our room, he plugged in the USB. The USB contained spreadsheets, dozens of them. Most were copies of financial templates, mock portfolios, asset breakdowns, stock movement projections. It looked legitimate on the surface, but Lucian immediately noticed something odd. The files weren't read-only or encrypted. They weren't files someone would just store. They were files someone would present. Demos. She's not just studying, Lucian said quietly. She's rehearsing. We needed more. I called Liza, an old friend from college who now worked in cybersecurity for a private defense firm. We hadn't spoken in nearly a year, but she didn't hesitate when I said it was about my father's safety. I told her only what she needed to know, that we suspected someone had accessed his laptop without permission, and we needed to check for remote breaches or malware. I'll send over a scrubber tool, she said. Run it tonight while no one's using the machine. And Selene, if I find anything, I'll call you first." That evening after the group dinner, my father left his laptop open in the study while stepping away to take a call. I slipped in and plugged in the tool heart hammering. Lucian kept watch in the hall. Within minutes, the tool flagged something. A hidden file running in the background active since Friday. A keylogger. My stomach flipped. Liza called me 10 minutes later. It's sending credentials and screen captures to a cloud server registered anonymously. The transmission started the morning after check-in. Whoever did this knew exactly when to plan it. "What kind of information has it captured?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Bank logins, internal firm communications, family trust access, everything. I thanked her and hung up, barely able to speak. Lucian's face darkened when I told him. She didn't just want access, she already has it. We sat together in silence, the reality pressing in. "She won't wait much longer," Lucian finally said. "She's probably already set up the exit." We both knew what had to happen next. We couldn't keep collecting pieces. We needed to put everything on the table, fast, clean, public. Lucian opened his laptop and clicked on a file labeled Audio. The terrace was glowing with golden lanterns, the lake behind us catching the last blush of evening. Rowan stood at the head of the table, his arm around Lyra's waist, his face lit with the open warmth I remembered from childhood. My parents were laughing softly, toasting with dessert wine, and the few remaining guests leaned in for what was supposed to be one last family toast before departures began the next morning. Lucian stood slowly, raising his glass. "Before we all part ways," he said, his voice, "even I just want to take a moment to thank the bride. Lyra, you've made quite the impression." Lyra smiled, poised, radiant, every inch, the beloved new wife. And I think Lucian continued pulling his phone from his jacket pocket. "It's only fair everyone hears your own words. A little something you said on Friday." Rowan looked confused. My mother tilted her head. Lyra blinked once, just once, before her eyes flicked toward Lucian's hand. He tapped play. The voice was unmistakably hers, low and hurried but clear. "Just transfer the assets Sunday night. He won't even notice until Monday. I'll handle the father. He's eager, greedy. People are easy." A pause rippled across the table. Forks clinked down. Glasses froze mid-air. Rowan's face drained of color. Lyra didn't move. I watched her closely. Her smile didn't fall away, it evaporated. The skin around her eyes tightened. Her posture shifted just slightly, as though something inside her had gone still. "I don't know what this is," she said, voice soft. "Some kind of deep fake." "That's not me." "You're sure?" Lucian asked calmly, setting his phone down. "Because the file metadata says otherwise." "Time-stamped? Geolocated." Rowan turned to her eyes, wide-wounded. "Lyra." She looked at him, then not lovingly, not apologetically, but calculatingly, as if weighing the probability of this moment going her way. "Rowan," I said gently, "we have more. Names, documents, a pattern." He stepped back from her, and in that second of silence she turned. She didn't run at first. She simply turned, walked off the terrace with perfect posture, and disappeared through the arched doors into the main house. I followed instinctively, Lucian just behind me. We knew where she'd go, the staff corridor that led toward the rear entrance and the service driveway. Rowan remained frozen in place, silent, stunned. By the time we reached the hallway, the two estate security guards we'd discreetly warned earlier were already there, blocking the exit. She stood calmly before them, a thin shawl draped over her arm like it had always been there. "I'd like my coat," she said evenly, eyes fixed on the taller guard. "And my phone." Her voice was quiet, composed, but the energy had shifted. The warmth was gone. Her eyes were colder now, sharper, like something coiled behind them had finally revealed itself. "I'm afraid we need to ask you to stay," one of the guards replied. "Guests are being asked to remain until law enforcement arrives." She didn't argue. She didn't flinch. She simply stepped back, her lips parting in what looked almost like a smile. "Of course," she said. When the officers showed up 20 minutes later, Lucian handed over the USB, the recordings, the keylogger report, and a printed file of identity documents. He spoke with calm precision as though he were presenting an audit summary at a board meeting. I watched Lyra from across the foyer, seated now, legs crossed, expression unreadable. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap. As they escorted her toward the door, she turned her head slightly toward me. "You think this is over?" she said, her voice like silk drawn across a blade. "It's just the beginning." I said nothing. Lucian stood beside me, arms crossed, steady as stone. Rowan emerged, then finally his face pale and tight. He didn't speak to her. He just watched, jaw clenched, as she was led through the door, down the steps, and into the waiting cruiser. Her heels clicked against the stone walkway, fading beneath the hum of the engine as it rolled away into the darkness. The days after felt suspended in quiet, like the air refused to move. Rowan didn't speak much. He stayed at our parents' house, sleeping late, taking long walks, barely eating. I checked in every day, sometimes just sitting beside him while he stared out the window. There were no dramatic outbursts, no tears. Just the slow, aching realization that none of it had been real. The annulment went through quickly. No one contested it, not that she could have. The FBI confirmed what we already suspected. Her real name was Celeste Radek, and she'd been operating under at least 4 aliases across multiple countries. Marriage fraud, financial theft, identity manipulation. Her trail stretched back nearly a decade, and she wasn't working alone. They were still unraveling the network. Rowan took it all in with a quiet sort of devastation. He blamed himself not for falling for her, but for trusting too quickly. "I thought love was supposed to be a leap," he said one night, his voice barely above a whisper. "Turns out I jumped without looking." Lucian and I stayed longer than planned, pushing back work, hovering without hovering. My mother coped by organizing things, closets, recipes, old photo albums. My father grew unusually still, rarely looking anyone in the eye, as though his own misjudgment weighed heavier than he wanted to admit. But slowly, something shifted. Rowan began joining us at meals. He cracked a dry joke about the weather. He helped my father clear out the garage and suggested therapy without needing to be pushed. He was still bruised, but the break hadn't destroyed him. One evening, as we sat by the fireplace, Rowan turned to me and said, "You saved me from losing more than money, Selene. You saved me from losing myself." I didn't know what to say, so I squeezed his hand and let the silence settle between us like a blanket. She had studied us, our habits, our finances, our bonds, as if we were a puzzle to solve. But what she didn't count on was love. Not the loud kind, but the quiet kind, the kind that watches, notices, remembers. What if the greatest wedding gift is the truth uncovered just in time?